a lot of people say this, oh, the kids are not the same, but they put the blame on the kids, whereas it's the parenting. Parents have become so lazy to discipline their children just because the majority of them are not doing it.
He lost everything. I didn't talk to him for 3 days.
You're a cool mum.
No, we had
screaming, going crazy, and I had to completely wean them off that.
There are billions of women passing through similar experiences all around the world, and for whatever reason, we often feel like we're alone. It's time to make a point of discussing these topics from a range of viewpoints. These conversations surpass age, race, location. They are relevant to women everywhere. Welcome to the She Word. Conversations that women rarely have, but really should.
What if you could start your journey over? Start here and start again there. That's how life works, in a circular way. We understand the importance of circles, and that's why you are at the heart of ours. Find your way to wellness with Browns.
Welcome to the She Word. Conversations that women rarely have, but really should. And today we're revisiting a conversation that we had in season 1 of the She Word. In fact, the most popular conversation that we had in the She Word season 1, which is women and parenting. But we're going to be looking at different aspects of parenting. And for this show, I'm really excited because I'm joined by Steph Spiteri.
Hi.
How are you?
Very well, thank you, and happy to be here.
I'm very happy to have you. Of course, I'm imagining that there's no single person on the island who doesn't know who you are.
Well, that's pushing it a bit. But
Because you are...
I do tend to be on TV very often. Yes.
Very often. Illum, Steph, you're on every day.
Yep.
So you're a television presenter and producer, but also you're the mother of a 20-year-old son.
Yeah.
So you have the eldest child of all of the group here at the
Very
table.
diplomatically said, yes.
Thank you.
Just the eldest child.
The eldest child, that's all I'm
Not
saying.
beyond that.
That's all I'm saying. We're also joined by Melissa. Melissa, this is
Hi.
your second rodeo with us. You were with us on the first Women in Parenting show. So for everybody that doesn't know who you are and seeing this for the first time, you are a social media influencer, but you're also the mother of 3, 2 of which are twins, and a lovely Maltese husband. And that's how you're in Malta, because you're actually from South Africa, aren't
Yeah.
you? But Malta is now your home.
Yes, it is.
So glad to have you back on the show for a second time.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
And one of the things that you said in the first round of this show really stuck with so many people. And I'm looking forward to really touching those topics again in this show. And Michella, aka Wandering 4, you're also a social media influencer who is really committed to bringing up your children with very different experiences to what might be considered
That's right.
the norm.
Yes.
So good to have you.
I'm so thrilled.
I've kind of got a bit of a girl fan thing going on because I'm a follower. I'm a follower of all 3 of you. So I feel like, I'm surrounded by celebrities, which is brilliant. So just to start off, I'm going to ask Steph, just give us a little bit of background about you and your parenting situation.
If I had to say something, you introduced me as a presenter and producer and mother, and I would put that first. Because no matter how many things I've done, no matter how many things I've achieved, being a mother takes first and foremost place, because somehow nothing else, brings itself up to measure. So I'm a mother. I only have one boy. He's 20 now. He's at uni. He's got exams presently. And obviously the situation is a bit stressed at home. But otherwise, he's a sweet boy. He's grown up with me since he was very young. In fact, a lot of people used to call him my shadow because I've always used to take him with me to work wherever possible. He knows, he met so many different people, so many celebrities, it's like, and he wouldn't know who they are, and he'd go, hello, and he'd be on, and then I go, he's a president. He's the minister. Okay. As if, at that age. But somehow now I'm very pleased that he's coming to work with me as well. He's doing graphics, in the studio as well. So just to, make a bit of money and at the same time learn. So we go to work together. He just started driving, and he drives me to work. I have a chauffeur.
Nice.
So it's okay.
Wait.
I'm making it sound like a fairy tale. It's not, obviously. I've had a lot of hardships, but I'm very thankful for the present situation.
Well, like I say, you have the eldest of the children of the mothers at the table, and I'm looking forward to kind of learning from your experiences. Melissa, just put into context your parenting situation.
So I've got 2.5-year-old twins, and then I've got Savannah, who is almost 6 years old. So my kids are still quite young, which makes me feel very excited about today because I feel like I can learn from you two. But yeah, so they are still very young. Everything is obviously new to me as well. And yeah, I'm just excited to hear your stories today as well.
Well, thank you so much for coming back.
Thank you for
And
having
as I
me.
mentioned before, Women in Parenting was a show that really hit so many women, and the response was phenomenal. Because, of course, I think it's very emotive for women, and the topics that we'll be talking about today are very emotive. And for you, Michella, your situation, your parenting situation.
Well, I am a mother of two, Nino, who's 11, and Lucia, that is 9. I feel like I have 2 children, but they are completely opposite, and which makes parenting quite adventurous because they are night and day. And we have a passion for travel, and that has helped influence the way I parent my children along with my husband as well. And as well, I am very excited because I love hearing different aspects of how mothers deal with their children everyday life. And there's always room for learning, and this for me is also a learning curve.
Well, it's a massive learning curve for me because I don't have children, and I've really enjoyed the first Women in Parenting show because I'm living vicariously through you guys, and I feel like I'm learning about being a parent through you guys. So I'm going to kick off with saying that the last edition, as I mentioned, Women in Parenting, we had 3 guests, and you guys I'm referring to you, Melissa, that show was very much about sort of becoming a parent, giving birth. There was an awful lot about giving birth in that show, and also what it's like to be a new parent. Well, now, today we're looking at a very different situation. We've got a child range between 20 and
2.5.
2.5. So we've got 18 years. So some of the topics that we're going to cover today kind of cover that whole range, and we're looking at what it is like to be a parent tackling those topics. So I want to start off with statistics that I've looked into in preparing for this show. And one of the statistics are I asked what are parents most concerned about in 2023. Parents of kids between 7 and 15 say that their biggest fear is the internet and social media. Which was the biggest concern overall for parents? For parents whose teens are of a driving age or even a little bit older, car safety and safety when they're out is their biggest worry. So we can talk about whether that's for you or not. But I also looked into what is the hardest year to parent a child. And I'm dying to know if this is true. In fact, age 8 has been regarded as the toughest of the majority of 2,000 parents who responded to a 2020 survey. It was said that 8 was the hardest year, whilst age 6 was better, and unexpectedly, age 7 produced the most intense tantrums. You see, I really looked into this. I'm lying to know, but Steph
I wouldn't agree with most of them because, but then again, I think we all have our own stories because each child is different. You know, I'm hearing you say I'm looking forward to learning, but no matter how many books you read, no matter how many things you hear, you have to face each situation as it comes. And you're never prepared. You know, I mean, like, there are situations which just happen, like, instantly. And what do? Do you go and look it up in an encyclopedia or on Google? You don't. You just have to face it and try and see and, I don't know, think and say, okay, what would my parents they have done? Because I mean, I had very simple parents. My father was a policeman. My mother was a housewife. I was brought up like very strict at home. My father was very disciplined because he was a policeman at work and he used to get it home with him. And growing up, I used to hate it because I used to feel my friends had all the liberty and I didn't. However, it taught me a hell of a lot, you know. I grew up. I became who I am because of my upbringing. So really and truly, whenever I make a decision, I always try and keep in mind what my parents would have done. And I try to go along.
But Steph, you've just hit the nail on the head for the first kind of topic that I wanted to go into, which was I read on social media recently, which is of course where we get all of our wisdom. I read that it is impossible to bring up children in 2022 or 2023 in the same way that we were brought up because we're not living in the same times. And I thought to myself, wow, that's quite powerful, because the world has changed so much since I was a child. So if I was a parent now, how would I be conveying the values that I had when I was a child? And that's the kind of topic that I want to just start with. What are the biggest, we're going to talk about values in a second, which you've just touched on. You've been reading my questions. You've been reading my questions. You've been looking over the top. But what are the biggest challenges? So I want to touch on that. The challenges that don't even think about it too hard, but that challenge that you like, geez. So I'm going to start with you. What is the biggest challenge, Michella, for you right now as a parent?
For me, I think it would be the way that we are bringing up our children and what you think you're doing to help your child be ready for the world. And then you send your children out into the world. Namely, for example, my son has just started secondary school. And you think you're prepared, but you're not, because they are facing so many challenges. And because my parenting style is different than other parents out there, that my son deals and reasons with the situation completely different. So if, like Steph, I believe that our children should be taught old school, but then at the same time making it your own in this modern world. There are parents out there who are teaching their children completely different. And so my son has to be able to deal with these things that I thought I had prepared him for. So it's this challenge of thinking that you are prepared and you've done the best, and then you go there and your son comes back home with a whole new situation that you haven't been prepared for.
Which is exactly what you just said, Steph, where you're kind of writing the script as you go. Is that right?
The situations just unfold in front of your eyes, you know, no matter what you say, no matter what you prepare a lecture and you say, if he does this, I will do this. And then something happens and you just have to, you know, like if maybe he says something and it's wrong, or he does something and you disagree, but maybe you're not at home, or maybe there are friends. So you always have to adapt to the situation at hand. Also, depending also on the state of, you know, on the mood, you know, because if, for example, maybe he's unwell, let's put it this way. My son's asthmatic, so he's always going through these coughing fits. And obviously at that stage, I know he's more sensitive and he's kind of weaker. And I try to empathize even more. So if he does something wrong when he's got these coughing fits, I'm not going to go and, you know, like start hollering away about it, because obviously I know he's already... So every situation, every day, even if he's done something today which is wrong, and then the next day which is wrong again, I'll probably treat it in a different way. And to be honest, at this age now, I know it goes against the norm, but I do feel like he's a friend rather than my son. I know you're not supposed to have a friend, you're supposed to have a son, but he is my son. But now he's a friend as well, because we do talk about everything. And I've been separated for 18 years, so he spent so much time with me, you know, being mom and son. I was going to say, I said daughter actually. No, because he went through all the phases with me, you know, how he's seen me applying makeup, he's been with me to work, he's seen me crying. You understand, he's been with me through so many things that now there isn't a place for me to get angry so much, because like I just tell him, Mike, should you? Would you? Yeah. Are you sure you're doing? And then like that's enough, kind of thing, you know.
But you can rationalize with your son because he's
older,
20.
Well.
Yes. Yeah. Now coming back to Melissa,
it's a completely different story.
Yeah. Where your kids,
I've been there.
Of
Yeah,
course.
exactly. Like I'm at the stage where I am not your friend, but that
Yes.
obviously I can imagine happens when they get older and when they become an adult. But for me, I obviously have to really enforce discipline and make sure that I'm doing it the correct way. I don't always know what the correct way is. And like you said, I can't just quickly go and read through my manual to see whether it's the right way or not. Sometimes you have to deal with the situation when you are in it and you have to do something right now. And I mean, you hear this term gentle parenting a lot. And believe me, I really
is that
want
term?
gentle parenting is basically where, like we've spoken
We had
about
this
before.
conversation.
Have you heard of this, Steph?
Now it's positive parenting.
Positive parenting as
Yes.
well. It's basically the same thing. So
It's
where
promoting it as well, like God.
it's not very easy to enforce that. And that's like, you don't say no to your child, you'd rather sit them down and, have a conversation with them, like person to person, not mother to child really. And not raising your voice. Sometimes, don't get me wrong, I do not like to raise my voice, but sometimes you are just human and it happens,
I
So-
think sometimes it's also very unrealistic.
It
though,
is.
the
I
way
do
that
find
they,
it-
They say, don't say no to your child because no is a negative term.
Yeah.
But I always say, so if you are walking down the street and your child decides to run into the street, the first instinct is to shout and to say, stop, no. You're not going to be like, darling, please don't do that. That's not very good for you. And if by the time you said that, something fatal has happened. So the instinct as a mother is to shout and to protect your child. And sometimes, yes, we have to be careful how we discipline, but gentle parenting sometimes does not work.
Well, good grief. We've been at this, 10 minutes, and this whole bunch of topics has suddenly exploded. But you have, going from challenges, have led nicely into this idea of values, because even when you're talking about not saying no to your child, you mentioned right at the beginning, Steph, about the values that you grew up with and instilling those values into your son. And of course, that then is also part of discipline. So as you've just mentioned, I didn't even know about this gentle parenting, but there's so many different ways of parenting these days from 20 or 30 or, in my case, 40 years ago when I was growing up. But if the trend is to be gentle, or even if it's something you're not subscribed to, how do you instill those values? Because the values are what we carry into adulthood, and they are the toolbox that we will need for the rest of our lives. How do you do that without saying no?
I don't know. I mean, I always used to work on the approval kind of thing. I don't know how to explain it. So if once again my situation was a bit different, because like I said, he was always running around and he saw me when I was at work. So at work I had like these rules and regulations which you had to abide to. You can't exactly walk in, mid program and go, mommy. So, you can't. So we had these, like I had to set rules to start with. Obviously, okay, we can talk, but when I'm on air, you cannot talk to me. So but somehow it used to be like, I always, I used to work on the star system. I don't even know whether it's appropriate anymore, whether it's acceptable or whether it's a good idea. When you do something right, I give you a star. And we work towards buying something. He used to have this collection of Rubik's Cubes, and there was always another Rubik's Cube which he wanted. So basically I used to have this sheet stuck to the fridge with squares. And for example, when we arrived home, I have these kind of home rules, like you take off your shoes. When you take off your clothes, you put them in the laundry basket. And since he was young, they used to be the stars, like, okay, you take off your good one.
I think that's great.
Go and put a sticker. And then like oh no, Mike, no laundry basket today, no star.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll put them in now, I want a star. No, you didn't put them in. And it used to work with everything. You did your homework. Ooh, I think you deserve 2 stars today. And obviously I used to make
You're
it
a
like,
cool mum.
I know, we had cool, and then obviously like the Rubik's Cube, he had to work for it. I had to get an amount of stars. He didn't get it easily. But then once we actually go to the toy shop to buy this, he goes with the stars, with the paper of the stars, and he's showing them, because I worked for this for the last 3 weeks or a month. And he used to feel so happy with it. So I worked on always the fact that kind of Again, I'm not saying it was the right thing, but you get rewarded if you do it. I did lose it a few times, but when you consider the amount of years, I don't think I've lost it. I lost it once. He stole one lira from me, and that was horrible. He lost all his stars. He lost everything. I didn't talk to him for 3 days. He wanted sweets, and I said no more sweets, enough. And he stole 1 lira. I'm saying lira because it was before euro, and I caught him. And I'm telling you, I think he can still hear my voice vibrating till today. That was bad.
But I don't think that's
was
bad either, because that taught him a lesson.
No,
Exactly.
but I wanted to make it a point
Yes,
that you do,
exactly.
if someone tells you no, there's a reason. So you don't, create
There's
your own
going to be
rules.
consequences.
And he actually took 1 lira from my wallet, and I realized. So it was.
But what
I think
I'm-
that was one of the worst.
Take a raincoat, jump on a steam train. What's your main line? I'll take the freeway. Been a long one, tough talking refrain. What's the lowdown? I'm on the other.
What I'm hearing though as well is that you have a one-to-one relationship with your son. You have an incredible relationship with your son, which is amazing. It sounds like, I don't know where this whole I've never seen the parenting Bible, but if there's somewhere where it says you
Haven't
can't be
either.
there you go, but somewhere where it says you can't be friends with your child, I would
No, I'm
scribble
sure
that out.
I'm sure I've made loads of mistakes along the way, but you just try and make it work.
But I'm going to
There were days when I did wrong things, and I went and I apologized.
Exactly.
As a
And
mother.
that is very important.
Well, let me bring that into the context, because these ladies are nodding and agreeing with you. But my point was that you have a one-to-one relationship with your son, and which is great, and that reward system is fantastic. How do you manage? Because you're nodding, and Melissa, you're saying yes. But how do you manage that parenting when you bring that into the context of 3 or 2, because then you add complications to the dynamic.
I only had one. So.
I don't manage that. I really want to, but with Savannah, my eldest, I had that type of relationship for the first 3 years. But then when the twins came along, and it wasn't just one child that she had to compete with, it was 2. So up until today, I still have challenges with her, because she's fighting for my attention constantly, which I don't blame her. I really do try and give that attention to each of them individually, but I can't give them the individual attention like I did for Savannah in the beginning. So now I try and make a point of it to spend solo time with each of them. So I would take one to the park, and the other 2 would stay with Daniel, my husband. Or I would take Sienna, one of the twins. I had to take her to the dentist the one day, and she was walking around like she struck the lottery, because she was alone.
Herself.
She was literally walking like this because she was alone, because they're not used to it, So I think individual attention, when I can, is what they obviously need. So that's what I try and give to them. But when we are at home, oh my goodness, they are all on top of my head trying to get my attention, and it's obviously tough for me as well, because I can't give it to them. So.
But then how do you bring these values? We started off talking about values and Steph, and we'll talk about discipline a bit more in a second, but you brought these values in for your son through a reward mechanism and through your
positive-
communication and the positive.
reinforcement.
Yes.
To your
But
children.
values and discipline are it doesn't take a genius, and even I can work out that they're hand in hand.
Yeah.
So coming to you for a second there, Michella, how do you instill values, consistent values, when your life gets complicated, when you've got, as you were saying, it's never consistent, there's always a new challenge. How do you make sure that you never compromise on those values? Because obviously that's going to affect discipline as well.
I always try and reason with my children. Whether
How old are they?
11 and 9.
Does that work?
Well, it works if you do it from an early age.
Okay.
Because you
okay.
are speaking to them, explaining to them. Obviously, their concept of understanding something is different according to their age. But I always try to explain to them. And I always explain to them that whatever you do in life, there's going to be a consequence. Even if you do something good, the consequences are still going to be good. But if you're going to do something bad, you cannot expect something good to come out of it. And lately my son has just come out from a 3-month punishment. I took his PC and everyone, that's the reaction.
No, I'm going, good on you, girl.
Yeah.
It was very hard, but I told him, I will give you the PC back when I see a change.
Yeah.
So it can take 2 weeks, it can take a year. It all depends on you. You have to work on yourself to change your attitude towards towards some things that he was not doing right. There's no point in me yelling, shouting, because it's not going to work with him. I know that. So I told him, you work, I need to see the work. When I know that you've really changed, not for me, for you, because at the end of the day, my job is to make sure that you grow up a decent human being, and this is what I have to do. When I see the work you've put into this, then I will reward you, because for everything, you have to work hard.
Reward, huh? It's this reward.
Yes,
You guys are
before
onto
it
something.
was stars. Today it's electronics. So and people have a big problem with electronics. In my opinion, if you use them wisely, they can be a great asset to bringing up children, because you can control how they use it, when they use it, and how much time they spend on it, and it's what they really want.
We're going to touch on that as well, because that is another one of the questions that you've obviously read already. But sticking with the values before we talk about discipline, because I'm loving this. I'm absolutely loving this. Sticking with this idea of values for you, going back to what you were saying,
Yeah.
how do you consistently bring home those values? Like, I keep going back to what Steph said, the situation changes all the time, and you aren't
does.
faced with a repeat where you can keep instilling it. Is it rewards? Is it like these guys? Is it...
To be honest with you, with the twins, I still find it hard, obviously, because they are young. So a lot of what they see is from Savannah. So Savannah is the one that she's basically my guinea pig, like everything that I'm learning is through her. So it's very similar to what
Yes.
you said as well. It is electronics, because that is the biggest punishment that she can have. Which makes me feel sad sometimes to think, but that is
it's
the
the
day and
reality.
age that we are living in.
Yes.
And I think it was maybe 2021, I read something about it's not necessarily the quantity, it's the quality of what they are exposed to. And, like what they're watching, if it's overstimulating, if it, especially with younger kids, I'm sure even,
Yes,
the
even
older
what
kids.
they watch. Like,
Yes.
we make sure that, like, a lot of his friends play certain video games, and we do not allow it. And
Yeah.
sometimes he's the only one from a group of 5 kids, 6 kids, that doesn't play certain games or doesn't have a certain app, because parents allow it. And it's become the norm that, because the kids today, that's how they are today. So we've accepted this idea that just because that's how it is, so we give in and we let them have whatever they want. Whereas in our household, it's different. You are not of age. I always ask him, how old? When you go and purchase an app, what is the age? And it says 13 plus, 14 plus. How old are you? 11. I'm sorry, you can't have it, but my friends have it. I'm sorry, but you just cannot have it. And it's difficult for them, because it can be very isolating for the children, because all the children are talking about this game that you have to be 15 plus, and there's my son, and he's like, yeah, but he doesn't know this yet, but in the future it will serve him well. And that's where it said the quality.
Well, see, Steph's probably the best person to answer in the future it will serve you well, because
I believe it does.
because your son is 20, so your son was experiencing...
I remember when he was about 3, must have been 4, we went out for dinner. And a friend of ours told me, Isaac Hitler. He told me, you're like Hitler. And I told him, excuse me. He told me, like, he keeps asking, like, may I go out and play? May I do this? Mom, may I get a Coke? Mom, may I do this? He told me, Isaac Hitler. And I told him, well, he's my son. I do the best I can, and that's what I believe in. About a year ago, we met for dinner. And his son, who's the same age, was talking to his mom as if she's a piece of whatever, like zooming him, like this. Lars, my son, talks to me like that, There's no way, because at the end of the day, respect was uttermost from day one. I respect him, but he has to respect me. So whether I'm Hitler or whether I'm not, it was something which I've instilled and which I'm very pleased
So
about.
it paid off.
I
So
do
everything
believe it
that,
did.
that Michella is saying over there pays off. You're proof that it pays off.
But I don't want to make it sound like everything's perfect because
No.
it sounds like
No.
it's not. There are a lot of.
I have no doubt.
But don't you think
Hiccups
that
along the way.
parenting today, a lot of people say this, oh, the kids are not the same, but they put the blame on the kids, whereas it's the parenting. Parents have become so lazy to discipline their children just because the majority of them are not doing it. So it's
Are they lazy, or is this a question of our world has become so busy? Because I, as a non-parent, I see parents today. I see how I was brought up. My mum didn't work. My mum really, her role was to look after us. Parents today are so much more busy than my
It might be a
parents
mixture
were.
of both, to be
Yes.
honest. It
Yeah.
might be both, I think. But you are right that nowadays our lives are very busy, you know? So
but that shouldn't stop you from
No.
disciplining your child, because
No.
at the end of the day, if you don't discipline your child, you are sending a child into the world without values, without morals, without principles. This is your job as a parent, is to discipline your child. Yes, in those 3 months, my mind, he completely was, you couldn't take all the moaning. It's much
But you
easier.
never gave in. You must have had a
It's-
moment where you wanted to give
Yes,
in.
and I contemplated, but out of my selfishness, because it would stop.
Yes.
I would not have a headache anymore, and I would not have to listen to, Ma, please, I can have it. So out of
Yes.
selfishness, you give in. But because it's much easier to give a child at his tablet and they're quiet for 2 hours and you get your job done, but it takes a lot more strength to stick to the punishment, and for him and for you, because at the end of the day, if I say this is what's going to happen if you do this or you don't do that, he knows I'm going to stick to my word. But if I say, oh, I'm going to give you a punishment, you're never going to see this PC, and then 2 weeks later, there you go, you can have it.
So I'm going to come to this thing. We're talking about technology, and it's one of the topics I really want to really embrace, because you mentioned just back there, Steph, about your son wanted to go out and play, your son wanted to have a Coke, your son wanted to have this. And what I understand as a non-parent that now, and you've just mentioned it, I'm going to come to you first, Melissa, that this thing of technology is a 2023 issue that is burning for every parent.
Yes.
Because you've just said about age limits, you've said about, your son is 20, so you've gone through that
technology
process.
hit him when he was about 10, 11. That's when he always had a computer at home, because we used to, I had it for work as well. So he used to play like these games and simple games, but it was never as challenging as it is today. And he actually started when he was about 10 or 11 years old, and I think that's when the problems with technology started.
social
everywhere.
media started back then. Like
Yeah,
all-
and
I
he
mean,
wasn't.
before that, but-
It's just he wanted to play games, because his
Oh.
friends were playing games, and he wants to play
Tablets.
games with him and stuff like
Yes.
that. And that's when it started, when he was about 10, 11. Prior to that, there were other situations, because everything. There's always a phase, how. So it was TV before, like again, SpongeBob coming out of my ears, and
I've still never seen SpongeBob. I still don't know what that is.
Please, I can tell you word by word what they say.
I'd rather take SpongeBob than Coco Melon, because that's what we had to deal with.
What?
And then the show's called Coco Melon, and
Nope.
that is actually where I was reading up about the whole rather give them quantity than bad quality, and that's bad quality because that is overstimulating, bright colors. There's the like karaoke, they write the song words at the bottom of the screen, so that is moving. There's movement all over the TV. And my daughter, she was 1 at the time, she was sitting like this. I could not get her eyes off that TV. And then when you switch it off, screaming, going crazy. And I had to completely wean them off that, because I used to put the TV on between 4 and 5 while cooking dinner, because I needed to have that time to, just get dinner ready for the family. And it was chaos when I had to switch it off. So that's when I started seeing like, okay, there's a problem here. And then I started introducing a different show, which is not overstimulating, which is completely different to that. And they just completely flipped in a positive way. So
But does the same then apply for, because I don't know, for media devices as well? Because you mentioned
sure,
that
yes,
Savannah
yes.
is, your words, almost addicted to these devices. I mean, we know that these devices hit the brain in certain ways
Yes.
to create the right chemicals to keep you engaged, just the same way that social media does. All
Exactly.
of those
Yeah,
things,
exactly.
because the objective is to keep you engaged. How the heck do you deal with that with a 6-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 9-year-old or 11-year-old? And of course, we'll come to you at the end there for words of wisdom, Steph, because you've gone through that journey.
Please keep it going. No words of wisdom here.
But Melissa, how do you set the guideline? Is
It's
it all
tough.
bad, or is some of it good?
I mean, at this point, I know you said example like, sometimes it can be used for good. I, at this point, feel like in our household, it's negative. And I don't want to lie when I say that. It does affect Savannah. I can't really say the twins because, once again, they don't have a tablet. They don't watch kids' YouTube or anything like that. But when Savannah has the tablet, she changes. She changes instantly.
To what? From what to what?
Whiny. She would even sometimes smack the door. Shame, I don't want to talk bad about Savannah, but she would do that.
This is from a tablet.
And what they watch, it's the same.
Exactly,
In
it's
it's
the
the same in
quality
our
of-
household. It makes them aggressive because
What?
Because I had read an article where it said the way that it is portrayed for children is instant gratification.
Yes.
So I don't want to watch this. Skip. I
yes,
like
yes.
this. I don't like this. That's why we have YouTube Shorts. That's why we have Reels. That's because everything is instant. I want to watch this, but it's taking too much of my time. Swipe, do this, and the kids learn from what they watch that. I want to watch this, and I don't like this, so I'm going to change it over.
They can't be creative anymore.
Exactly.
But you just said swipe, and immediately taking the conversation back maybe 10 or 15 minutes, you talked about swiping. Of course, what is the thing that we use that term for is Tinder, where you swipe left or right, which you're talking about instant
Exactly.
gratification when it
I
comes
don't
to
like this, swipe. I
relationships.
don't- yeah.
This is the
Exactly.
values and the morals that we're teaching our children, and you're talking about instant gratification. This is phenomenal. This is new to me.
And for example, when I say this, I say it in our household because it works for us. It doesn't mean it's going to work for all their
Yeah.
families. Our children are not allowed to use electronics during the week
Yes.
because one, we don't have time for them to be on their electronics, and when they know they can use the electronics, it becomes a race against time to get their hands on the electronics. So the work that you're doing in the meantime is not because I'm doing the work, because this is what I need to be doing now. I'm doing this so I can get on my iPad. So during the week, they don't have it. Then on the weekends, if you've done your homework, if you've helped, you can have it. Sure, there are mornings, many mornings they wake up, they sneakily go in their bed, they take the tablet and they're watching. And then that's where the selfishness comes in. I want to have a lie-in. I don't want to start yelling, have you done your homework yet? So I pretend I'm sleeping a bit more. But then when we wake up, okay, come on, let's start. But this is the thing. This is how it works for our family. We've eliminated during the week, and we're very careful as to what they watch, what they play, and who they play with. In some parents' books, I'm a mean parent because it's
Going
what
back
it is.
to your Hitler.
Yes, exactly. Why MC again? Why not give it to them? It's too much. It's today's world. That's how it is. Maybe, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to keep trying and using this method, because when we are off school, they need to be occupied. If we leave them on the tablet for the whole 3 months, they would just stay inside for the whole 3
Yeah.
months. So what? So just because we don't have school now, we allow this free will of using the iPad as much as you want. There has to be a cut-off time. There has to be a routine that goes towards using this. And this is where positive behavior comes from. You do your work, of course. You have your duties, you have to do your bed, you have to help out with the chores, you have studying. But then when you do that, then yes, you can have your own time in using it.
Can I play devil's advocate for a second? And I'm going to apologise before I say this because, again, this is coming from a point of view of someone who's never gone through this journey with a child. But if we've heard about this reward system, which works. It worked for me as a child. It works for your children. And I'm not questioning that. That fundamentally is a great system. But we've also talked about media devices being possible to engage negative behavior, to bring out negative behavior. So why is the reward for good behavior to give to a child something that's going to instill bad behavior? It just as I'm making it really simple, and I'm not meaning to be argumentative.
No, not at all.
No,
I
think
mean-
because they love it so much.
Yeah, and because
But does that make it good?
no, but you also can't take it away from them completely because that is unfortunately what it is like nowadays, you know?
Our reward when we were young used to be a packet of sweets, which we liked.
Exactly.
Or a nice book, which I was craving for. Now, if you give them a bucket of sweets, it's probably bad because it's bad for the teeth anyway.
You wouldn't even
you-
consider
so-
giving it anyway.
So you're not
There's
even
no way.
allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And if you give him a book, he'll tell you, oh, I have so many of those for school. So it's like, you know how, so if you have to, at the end of the day, if your reward is a day at the spa, it's useless for me to tell you, okay, let me take you to a library. If it's what you enjoy,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah,
day at
that's
the spa.
true.
It's like at any age, and that age, that's what they like, you know. I mean, I've had this because I've lived with this. I'll tell you just a short story. I never left him at home till he was about 14, approximately, and then unfortunately my mom got sick, and I had to start leaving him at home alone when I couldn't take him with me to work. And he used to have to do his work, his homework, some of it, on the PC. I had a PC at the time, not a laptop, on the PC. Now, I used to leave him alone, make sure that he has to do his work, and I used to go to work for the program, and then I come back home. And one day I went in and I logged in after a day or two, and I realized that in the history he was playing instead of doing, because, you know, in the PC history you can check. So the third day when he came home, I left for work, and after a while he called me and told me, Ma, I'm looking for the mouse. Where is it? I told him it's in my handbag. Which handbag? I told him I took it with me to work. Why? I told him because without the mouse you can't play. You have to study and do your work. So for a month I took the mouse with me to work.
Yeah, so it's the same as when
brilliant.
you yeah.
My son went to school. He came back from
You open
from school.
my
and
work
this-
bag, and you find a mouse running around every day.
Yeah.
It's like, hello.
yeah, the same. When we decided to take his PC, I didn't tell him what I was going to do. He went to school, and he's really proud of his like gaming PC. He's got a keyboard that lights up and all this. And he came back, and his desk was empty. There was nothing on it, and he's like, "They robbed us, Ma."
Oh my goodness.
That's. I was like, "No, you're not having your PC." And then comes the, "Why? This is not fair. How can you do this to me? Who am I gonna play with now?" And then comes all of this. And as I said, it's not easy to stick to your guns and say, I'm going to do this. But then after the 3 months, he himself realized, because he told me, even my attitude was annoying my friends. And I said, see, there you go. I said, if I did not discipline you and take the things that you love the most, it wouldn't make a difference to you. Because for example, if I tell Lucia, you can't play with Lego for 3 months, her world would crash completely. Lego, because she loves it. She's a creative child. She loves to play. Whereas if I told Ninu, you can't have Lego for 3 months, he'd be like, so
What?
But so they play online with their friends, right?
Yes.
See, so that's also even a form of socializing for them.
Exactly. And then you get these messages on Teams, and he's like, can you come and play? Can you come and play? And then I feel sorry because he's like, I can't play. I don't have a PC. And then comes the, what?
I can imagine.
Wow. And then him explaining to him. And even the fact that he has to explain, because I told him, I said, if they ask you why, go on and tell them why.
Wow. Listen, you talked about school. I'm going to transmit this conversation into the school theme as well, because you've just talked about friends. You mentioned about your son coming back to do his schoolwork and having no mouse. I love that. I'm just like, go girlfriend. I love the fact that your son thought he'd been robbed. I think that's brilliant. I'm going to start with you, Melissa, because school has been mentioned, but it's also an incredibly important part
Yeah.
of a child's life, which means it's an incredibly important part of parenting. Again, from my perspective, I see a huge amount of emphasis on which school a child goes to, how their grades are, what they're doing, where they're going, where they're potentially going to be studying, and how much schoolwork they have. Probably more than when I was a child. I sort of grew up in the era where you just, kick you out and you walked 2 miles to school, and if you made it home by Blue Peter, you were fine. But you're going to
I do not fall in
first.
that category of being overly concerned which school my kids go to, and I'm not like that. I sent my kid to school 2 blocks away from where we are in a public school. We don't speak Maltese at home. So for me, it was very important that she would be able to learn that at school. It was important for me to be close to the school as well, because the amount of times the school calls and says, you have to come and pick up your daughter because she's sick, or you have to come and pick up your daughter because she had an accident. I do not want to drive 20, 30 minutes to a school to go and pick her up. So for us, it was very important to be able to have our daughter and the twins close to where we are, because we live in Maliha, so we are, all the way up there. And for me, I think, especially at their age now, it's more important to learn through physical experiences rather than sitting at a desk and learning, I mean, my daughter is 5 years old and she's getting homework every single day. And to
She's
me,
how old? I'm getting homework.
5, and because she's year 1 now. So I think in Malta it's already they start.
But
school
how much
1.
homework?
I mean, 2 pages, but to me it's too much.
But how long
because
does that take?
obviously, if I had to do it, it would take me 30 seconds. But for her, she's learning everything, so it does take longer. And when she comes back home from school, she cries because she says, I just want to sit down and relax. And I
play.
honor that feeling and play because I
play.
wanted to,
But that's in preparation for when it gets worse as well.
Exactly,
Because now it's
exactly.
2 pages, and then it's becoming 4, and then it's
Exactly.
becoming
My
10, and
daughter
then it's
is-
becoming a project, and then
Yes.
it's becoming...
My daughter is 9, and last time she had 14 pages
Yeah,
of homework.
that's
I
why.
was so angry. I was this close to going and speak to the teacher, but I know it's not. You're not going to get anywhere. But I'm like, when is this tiny human being expected to enjoy her? We are instilling this busy life that
Yes.
they come back from school, change, eat, shower, then start your homework because you have to be. Because we want them to be in bed at a decent time. In our household, 8:30, you have to be in bed. You have to
8:30, I'm in bed.
Yes.
Quite frankly.
Me too.
but sometimes they have so much homework that I say, okay, stop the homework so we can have dinner together, watch some TV, and then you go and either you do it in the morning or you tell your teacher, I'm sorry, I didn't have time to do it. It's wrong because the teacher just like, you didn't have time to do homework, but it's this constant bombarding our children with homework, whereas they don't realize how important play is and spending time with your family and eating around the dinner table and talking about it rather than hurry up because you still have to finish your homework.
But Steph just mentioned this is preparation for what is to come.
And
And
it only
you
gets
know
worse.
You know what makes it even worse as well, apart from the actual academic studies, then we have, I don't know, ballet or
Yes,
the
I don't know,
extracurricular
you know how,
activities.
like, or football or karate or table tennis or whatever. And apart from making time for those things, those become a competition as well.
Exactly.
Where in those things they have to excel as well.
Yes.
So you're trying to do your best at school. You're trying to do your best in piano lessons. I don't know, whatever your child fancies. But the thing is that they're always in competition. And I hate that because that's something that I always used to tell him, okay, you want to try, we've tried all different sports. I mean, I must have bought all different kinds of equipment because first with the football, so by the shins and the football, blah, blah. And then after a while, Okay, we try karate. So we go by the kit of karate, and then we try, anyway. The thing is that I never wanted that part of his life to become a competition because he's got enough with school. So at least the extracurricular activities, in my opinion, should not be competitive. Now,
But
if you're excelling and you're so good and you're being pushed, then it's a different story. But I don't see why all these clubs and like you have to be first and make sure. And
they
too
they
much.
don't practice a sport for the sake of practicing a sport. For example, my daughter loves to sing, and she loves to sing, and she loves to dance. But you can't do it just for fun. You have to do it because then you've got an exam, and then you've got someone coming to see if you're doing the singing properly and you're doing this. So everything becomes an exam. Everything becomes a chore. So the idea of doing something just for the fun of it is completely obliterated in the kid's mind, because it goes school, which is a lot for them at that age. At any age, it's a lot. There's a lot of pressure. And then if you want to do something for fun, which obviously we want to send them to, then you have to buy the uniform. Then you've got the exam. Then you have to make sure you're there for the game, the competitive game. So everything is
There's one question that I really want to touch on, and again, I'm not wanting to be contentious or difficult, but when do children in 2023 have the opportunity to be bored? And the reason I say bored is because creativity is quite often born from boredom.
boredom, yes.
You're bored, you've got nothing to do, you find something to do.
yeah.
And that's, again, I'm talking about 40 years ago, but that's how we were brought up. We were not allowed to have television from this time to this time. You're bored, you don't know what to do, you're going to go and find something. Does your son did he ever have time to be bored?
I mean, sometimes we go through phases of inventing something. I mean, like he likes to doodle as well. So even though, for example, he'd be in a lecture, has to doodle because he gets very nervous. So he's always drawing. Like at one stage, it was like these symmetric shapes and stuff like that. But it would be alongside something else, how, and then we'd go into this phase like he wanted this, I don't know, like a drawing pad, an electronic drawing pad, and we got that, and I started drawing on the computer and stuff like that. It's a phase, but no, I mean, I wouldn't say, for example, I remember when I was young, I used to do crochet and knitting, but we're talking about a number of years ago. I don't even think they know what knitting needles look like anymore, So
I know.
but that's a reality,
I had knitting at school. So.
I never had it at school, but I used to find it very rewarding that I used to
Yes.
create something.
Yeah.
Or
Exactly.
I used to make a cap and then like show it off and feel like it's the most beautiful, Chanel, better than Chanel cap. But those were things because I used to do on a personal level and I used to love them. I don't think, unfortunately, that now... I mean, growing up, I used to do a lot of cards for Mother's Day, for
Yes,
my
of course.
birthday, for my mother, he used to do a lot of these things, but those were school. And then we used to do them at home. We used to do papier-mâché at home and stuff like that. I remember doing these things and doing, with the spaghetti and this. I used to invent. I used to look up things. I had bought books. Things have changed because obviously now it feels like a lifetime ago because he's 20. We haven't done those things for a while. But again, before I wanted to point out something, but the conversation went a bit astray. Because we were saying we're very, very busy and like we tend to not be disciplined because we're busy. I think, yes, I think I'm one of the busiest people I know because I tend to work till midnight every day. Like I carry on working. But what suffers what suffers rather than me with him is, for example, sometimes I don't have time to cook. So what I do is I don't cook every day. I cook on Saturday. I make I call it our Victory Kitchen. I make pasta and then we have for Saturday and, for example, Monday, because Sunday I'll have time to do something, Monday and Tuesday. So I don't cook. So that at least gives me another hour to myself to work. If it's clothes, I usually hang the clothes at midnight and I hang clothes at midnight because I don't have time to do these things. But you have to find priorities because yes, we are very busy and yes, I believe the house suffers to a certain extent. I mean, I have all these new house gadgets and these vacuum cleaner with the cordless vacuum cleaner because it makes my life easier. And I have, the wetless mop and, all these gadgets to make my life easier so that I'll still have a clean house. And I buy all the new irons so that maybe ironing is easier, but they still need to get done and you still need to find the time. And then something you have to prioritize.
But that's what I like about what you're saying. You prioritize.
Yes.
My mom always taught me the kids are not going to remember how clean your house was, but they're going to remember when you sat down and you played with them and you sat down and you had a meal together. They're not going to remember how clean the house was because that's not a priority for them. The priority is that you sit down with your child, and that's even though you go to and then you self-sacrifice because your kid is in
Yes, by
bed,
far,
but
yeah.
you're doing laundry. But this is the difference. That is a form of discipline for your child as well, because you are giving the time and showing him, and that's where the values come in, that no matter how busy you are in life, I'm still making time for you. And if, in my opinion, yes, that is, we lead a very busy life, but you prioritize your child. And unfortunately, not a lot of parents do prioritize their children. And it might sound bad, but it is the reality. Not everyone prioritizes their child. And that makes a difference in a child's life.
I used to cook a lot with him as well when he was younger, when I arrived back from work, because I've been like at the last 25, 30 years, just even before he was born, I've been having a program every day between 4 and 6 or 4 and half 6 or 4 and 7, which is the time when normal people cook and, they do everything. So basically when I arrived home, there wasn't food, because I have to cook it. So he'd come with me and he'd peel the carrots and cut them and stuff. And at the same time, he used to realize that it takes a while, for the food to come to the table. You don't just click your finger and the food comes to the table. But that's something which I never could give him and which I had when I was growing up, because my mom, she never went to work. I used to go home. I used to find my plate ready with the orange freshly peeled and the apple, peeled in slices. And then, on the plate and with the orange squeeze and the vitamin C, like effervescent, like literally.
Oh,
as soon
my
as she said,
word. Remember those.
I was spoiled rotten. And that's something I could never give him because I never had that time. He never came home and found, he finds it in the fridge with cling film. He gets it out. He puts it in the microwave. It's my food, at least. Because like I said, fix the kitchen food, and it's in, and then I freeze, make lasagna, freeze. Okay, so what? But these things, I do feel, I wish I was more like my mother in a way, because she was always there. She was always there. I never remember going home and I don't find her there.
But we are talking about scalability. We're talking about essentially having a set of values, a set of priorities, and scaling them to fit the life of which you're leading. And I'm going to I can't believe it, we're going to be wrapping this show up already, but we are coming to the end of this show. And before, when I mentioned to you, Michella, about scalability, we talked about priorities and what your values are and how to instill a good outlook for the future. And one of your things is traveling. And we'll come to you in a second, because I'm going to start with Melissa. But we talked about the fact that you love traveling. You will love giving your children an outlook, the positive outlook, by traveling with them. And whilst that isn't necessarily something that everybody can afford to do or has time to do, they can. You posted recently about the fact you'd gone to Gargua to see a sunset. And that's just scaling down those values to something that's local and something that's achievable for all families, I would have thought. Again, naively thought. But so what I want to do is wrap up. I could talk forever with you guys. Your ladies are amazing. But I want to start with you, Melissa, because I want to just touch on the values and the tools that are most important for you to give to your children for the future, and how you do that.
I mean, it's definitely no easy task, but I always talk to them about being kind. I think one of the main things for me is to teach my faith to my kids as well. And I feel like that's a very important part, and that covers a very broad aspect of it as well, So every night I will sit down with them and say their prayers and stuff, read the Bible to them, because that's what's important to me. So I feel like if I can at least just teach them that and teach them to be kind human beings, then, I mean, a big job is done already. So to me, that is very important.
And do you see that any particular aspect of their life is ever challenging that? How do you deal with the challenge? How do you deal with that, making sure that you have that time when it gets really busy, when Savannah doesn't want to give up her iPad and all the rest of it? How do you deal with that?
It's not easy. I mean, many times I would say, please put on your iPad now. And now it's time for us to, get into bed, read the Bible. I don't want to read that now. I want to, have more iPad. So, I mean, sometimes it's also just give and take, Sometimes you have to kind of just be like, okay, you know what? Like, let's just close our eyes and let's sleep now. But if you are consistent, at least, I think that's the most important.
Cool.
So.
I love that. Coming to you, obviously traveling, you're the wandering four. Traveling is a really big part of that. What are the tools that you're giving your kids for the future by making sure that you travel and see other cultures? And how can somebody in Malta who doesn't have the budget or the time to travel, how can they convey the same thing?
Well, traveling for us is a time, free time to spend as a family. We work a lot, we work hard to be able to travel, but when we are traveling, we are together as a family. Now, it doesn't mean to spend time as a family, you have to travel. And that takes us to Sunset in Gargour. We carve out time, because if you look for time, you're never going to find time. You have to make time for your family. So we make time, whether we're traveling, which is a big part of making family time, or at home, go watch the sunset, go for a walk together, make time together. And in that time that you are together, you are talking, you are getting to know your son, your daughter on a one-on-one level, regardless of what's happening around homework, work, whatever it is. You're just there walking and enjoying the time. Now, whether you're doing it in a jungle somewhere or in Gargour with your family, you are making that time. And as Melissa said, values, your faith, it helps. I think the values come from the faith that you have as well. So that helps as well. But you have to make it your own. And I always remember that what works for my family doesn't necessarily work for others. But if this is working for us, then we're going to keep doing it.
To you, Steph. I'm going to say again, you're the one with the most experience here.
Here it goes again.
Diplomatically.
She keeps rubbing it till the very end.
The most experience, I said. I have most experience. Is this something that you chose to do through the life of your son? Are you really happy with the way that he looks at life and he looks at the future and his outlook?
Sometimes I think, because he's seen me, I tend to be a bit soft. Okay, like if anyone asks for help, I go out of my way to help. I feel I've gone out of my way to cry with people. And he obviously, since he's always with me, he's lived all these experiences. And there were times when he saw me being hurt because of these situations. Now, he keeps telling me, oh, you're a softie. He tells me I'm a softie. But yet he's as soft as I am. And that worries me and that scares me. Because in today's world, I don't think a boy especially should be that soft, because he doesn't have the malice, He doesn't have the bad. I don't know. Sometimes I'm scared that he might not be equipped enough for the world. I'm scared that he'll get hurt. I think that's what scares me most. I think that he'll get hurt.
Okay. Well, we talked about turning negative into a positive. So if that's what scares you,
No, I try
what
to
are
tell
you
him.
most proud of? What are you
Because
so
he's a
optimistic
darling.
about?
He's a good boy. He's a very, very kind, sweet, and thoughtful. You can't imagine how thoughtful he is. You have no idea. I'll just tell you this. I know we're running out of time. When he was about 7 or 8, my son loves to eat. Okay, you don't joke around his food. You don't fool around with his food. He loves to eat. And as a reward, his teacher, when he was at school, this is primary school, she gave him 3 gummy bears as a reward. And this was around 9 in the morning. So he kept one of these gummy bears for me to come back home when he came back home. So this gummy bear fell on the floor in the playground. I mean, it was one of those gummy bears with the sugar coated. So basically, by the time it came home, it was grayish black instead of white. And he comes home and he goes, "Mommy, look, I got this for you." This was when he was 7. Eat it!
I knew you were going to say that.
And I had to eat it because obviously he carried. Can you imagine? He gets 3 and he keeps 1 for his mommy. Throughout this, I mean, this was when he was 7. He goes out, he sees, for example, he knows I like pregnolata. He comes home, "I got you a piece of pregnolata." Oh no, he hears me say, "I like," because I love butterflies. He sees a butterfly, he gets me a not really butterflies, like a small statue of a butterfly. These small things. He is extremely thoughtful. And that is something I not because of the rewards, of the monetary rewards, or, not because of the fact that, I mean, I'm his old mummy, and yet he thinks of me all the time. Yeah, I think that's the most.
I think that's such a beautiful story to finish with. And I think you ladies, what a great example, what a great mentor in Steph, particularly for you, Melissa, because you've got challenges coming.
There were days when I used to tell him, "I'm going to buy one of those ceiling fans, the ones that go around, stick you to it and stay." So just in case I made it sound all rosy, please, please.
We all have those moments where you're the ideal parent, but then comes a time where you become
I used to, I'm going to go and buy this fan, just for you to know, a ceiling fan and stick.
It might sound fun
Which
to
obviously I'll never do.
Of course, but
He's too heavy, I can't even carry him up.
Savannah's going, "Yeah, go do it." I think that sounds like a great idea. Listen, ladies, thank you so much. I can't believe we've come to the end of this show. So many important things have been said, and I'm absolutely thrilled, and I'm absolutely certain we're going to do this again.
Yes.
But thank you for now. Thank you very much to
Pleasure.
you, Steph,
Thank you.
Melissa,
Thank you.
and
Thank you
Michella.
so
Thank
much
you
for
very
having
much.
me.
Thank you.